Hey everybody, I am just going to get my screen sharing started here so that we can get started. Okay, my name is Debbie Wright. I am the manager for the Volusia County Manatee Protection Program. And today I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about our Manatee Watch program. And hopefully maybe some of you might be interested in going forward and joining our Manatee Watch program. But otherwise, I'm at least going to talk to you about, part of what our Manatee Watchers do, and focus on the scar documenting, our Manatee scar documenting, and let you guys try your hand at that and see if it's something that, is interesting to you. Perhaps you'll want to pursue it further with our program and get a little bit more in-depth education about manatees during one of our full-on trainings. But for today, I just want to explain basically that Manatee Watchers are volunteers who have access to waterways on a regular basis. Obviously, that's where our manatees are. They observe and document manatee sightings along Volusia County waterways, even though, quite frankly, it doesn't have to be Volusia County. So we have plenty of volunteers that go to visit their relatives in other areas, and they'll send reports in from there, which is great because then we can see some of our regular Volusia manatees and whether or not they like to travel outside of the county, or see which ones are entering into our county from other places. So we are okay with having other areas in our database as well. We are not law enforcement or government representatives or rescue staff. We have a Volusia County Marine Mammal Stranding Team. They're the ones in that picture in red. But they're trained in a completely different way, and they have other qualifications that they need to be a part of that team. So our Manatee Watchers are not the ones going out and putting hands on the animal, actually just the opposite. So our manatees are managed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. The species is protected by 3 laws, and Florida Fish and Wildlife are there to make sure that these laws are being obeyed. The 3 protection acts are the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972, the Endangered Species Act of 1973, and then the Florida Manatee Sanctuary Act of 1978. So it's very important that all of our volunteers are fully trained and understand. And even if you decide to just kind of do this sort of documenting on your own time, know that it is against the law to actively pursue, approach, disturb, harass, harm, or in any way interact with the manatee. And that's why our observers are in no way supposed to do any of those things in order to document the animal. If they are out on a boat and the animal is near them and they could document the animal, that's great, or a kayak. But if it goes away from them, they are to stay where they are. They cannot follow that animal. It's considered pursuing or approaching the animal, and that is against the law. So it's one thing to really know while you're out there, even if you're just out there kayaking recreationally, and it's tempting to want to follow the animal and see what they're doing or where they're going or trying to get that great picture, but just know that it is illegal to do so. But also our watchers are out there with just getting eyes on our sick, injured, or orphaned animals a lot faster than they would have been. And they're also taught to call that into FWC at the hotline number, which is 1-888-404-3922. They do this all on their own time, and they can spend as much or as little time as they want. Some people take the training and I never get a report in after that, but others like to send in, seasonally. It's really up to the volunteer. So there's no pressure to being a volunteer with the program. The goal of the program is to gain a better understanding of how manatees are utilizing Volusia County waterways. So we're also out there raising awareness. So when you go through the training, you're going to learn everything that you would possibly imagine learning about the biology of the animal, about their behaviors, about what to look for a sick or injured one. And then when you're out there, if people see you, you're documenting an animal, they might have questions about that. And so you can be there to kind of help raise awareness. And then also, as mentioned before, providing that quick response for any animals that you see in need of care. So our volunteers are not only identifying the animals by their scar patterns, but they're also providing information to us regarding their behavior and the location of the animal, what it's doing. Is it feeding? Is it nursing in that particular area? And then this can give us information to influence future programs, activities, and conservation measures. Our watchers can document from anywhere, whether it's a home or a dock or a fishing pier or boat, kayaks, etc., just as long as they're not trying to pursue the animal. If they're in the kayak, they want to take their paddles out of the water if they're around the animal to show that they're not trying to harm it. If they're in a boat, they're going to put their engines in neutral to show that they're not following it and to make sure that they don't accidentally hit the manatee with their prop. They just have a couple forms to fill out. And this form here, we have a digital version on our website for them, so they can do this right from their tablets or phones or computers. But some people like to fill out the actual document and email it in, and that's fine. But you see at the bottom there that it asks for whether or not photographs were taken. And this day and age, with cameras being what they are, really the best thing for us are those photographs. So we really depend on them. It used to be a little bit different because cameras weren't as great as they are now, but man, now we can get such great photographs. So the importance of the photographs is that the USGS created the Serenia project, which is a study of the life history and population dynamics and ecological requirements of the West Indian manatee. So the manatees that we have here, we call the Florida manatees. They're actually a subspecies of the West Indian manatee. So these are the ones that are that the Serenia project is based off of. We get that Serenia project name from the fact that manatees are Serenians, unlike dolphins, which are cetaceans, and whales are cetaceans. Manatees are Serenians. So this is the Serenian project. Now with this project, they developed a manatee individual photo identification system, or MIMPS for short. This is a computerized database of images and life history since 1978. So that's how long we've been documenting manatees in this catalog. There's over or close to 5,000 at this point, 5,000 uniquely marked individuals in the catalog. And to be sure that they're only putting each animal in the catalog once, there's a very specific criteria that they follow. And that criteria is that the manatee has at least one permanent or healed feature that's unique enough to be recognized in future photos. So a big chunk from the tail that's missing, or a very unique looking scar. The manatee is also fully documented by photographs. This includes regions of the body that are not scarred. So we want to be able to, we'll see that change throughout the course of the animal's life as sightings come in. A photo with yes, this is guaranteed this animal, but it used to not have a scar on its left shoulder, for example. Maybe now it does. And that's something that will be updated in the catalog. But the photos clearly show features of their position on the manatee as well. So an up-close picture of a unique scar doesn't help us unless we know exactly where on the body it was, because there are some scars that look quite similar, but it might be on one animal's back and another animal closer to the tail. So that's why that's important to have the full picture of the animal. So when you're taking photographs, it's suggested that you attempt to fully document the manatee. You record all pertinent information onto the data sheet, sketch features that you photograph, Always know that quality is more important than quantity, and avoid glare and distortion from ripples and chop. So here's an example of a manatee, taken a couple of photos of a manatee that were taken by one of our volunteers. And these are great photos because we have from both angles. We have the looking from the front and looking from the side, so we can clearly pretty much see the whole animal just by these two photographs. This is definitely good enough to be able to identify this animal, and we were able to. In fact, this was Marty. Marty is known as a female. She has this very unique indentation in her tail and these propeller wounds, which will probably fade over time. But then she also has this really unique top shoulder scar. So that's how we know that was her. I like this photograph because what David Alexander did for this identification, even though you can, as you can see, we can't see the full animal, he marked on the photograph that where the head was versus where the tail was. And that tells us when we're looking at these scars here, for example, we know that these are closer to the head. So that's going to help us identify, possibly identify the animal in the future as well. And what he did was took the original photograph, which you see down here in the bottom corner, and enhanced the photo. So you can see what a difference that enhancement made if you have that available. Otherwise, it's quite all right. The other form that our Manatee Watchers fill out, and also really important, kind of goes along with the photographs really well, is our scar sheets. This is just instructions on how to fill out your scar sheet, and this is what you can practice later on today. And as you can see here, this open circle, that would identify a white scar on the animal, versus these over here, which are shaded in. Those are your gray scars. Straight line can potentially mean a fresh wound, but really I would indicate on the form that that was a fresh wound and not just a really thin gray scar. It can get a little bit confusing. And then on the sections of the tail, like Marty in that previous picture, where there's a whole chunk that's missing, you would fill in that portion of the tail all completely gray to show that that was missing. And there's plenty of room on the form to make notes about what you're drawing as well. This is what the scar sheet looks like. There's 2 manatees or documents per sheet, either just to save a tree, or maybe you happen to get a dorsal and a ventral side of the animal, or perhaps you just want to put 2 animals on one sheet. That's perfectly fine. So here's some examples of how you would fill that out. So we have, for example, this one. It has a white scar up here on the kind of the middle of the back. It's a little crooked, so it seems like it's to the left, I would think, but here it is documented. You have another white scar over here on the left side, also documented. Kind of a gray one right here at the peduncle, which is this section right here at the base of the tail, called the peduncle. And there's this gray scar here, really healed, kind of hard to see almost, but that is documented. And just to the left of that, these open circles here, that's showing these white scars that are right over here. Then at the base of the tail, we have a whole chunk that's missing. So as I said, just fill that completely in. And then these gray scars are documented as well. A little bit hard to see in the picture, but that's why also, because it's hard for us to see in the picture, maybe this person that was up close and had a better look at it, perhaps when the tail came up out of the water, they were able to document those scars on the scar sheet, so we know what maybe we're not noticing in the picture. Next, we have this photo here where we just have the tail in the photo. However, when you look at the scar sheet, it is documented that there were scars on the upper body, even though the picture, he was only able to get that last glimpse of the tail, not a real good picture of the body, but he could see it and was able to document the scars on the scar sheet. So that's why these scar sheets are really important to help us identify. So he took great notes there. And here's another one where it's just the tail. And he just mentioned that he wasn't even able to see the body, it was just the tail, but you know what, that has a very unique scar on it, so we're able to potentially identify that animal. So when you're looking at manatees, their scars are going to range from all different shapes and sizes and amounts. For example, this one has several different boat strikes. You can see some are older, some are new. He clearly likes to spend a lot of time in high boat traffic areas. You might see these gray scars only. This animal looks fairly clean, other than if you look closely, there's these propeller marks whenever you see parallel lines like this. I'll highlight them in black here. You can see them a little better. That's a propeller wounds, and they're actually really healed at this point. Also healed scars are these white scars, lots of them, a couple different strikes there, different. And then we have some fluke damage, or a lot of fluke damage, I should say. So this is this animal, I believe its name is phalanges. Obviously, it has a very unique tail, easy to identify for us. And then if ever you see fresh injuries like the ones here where we have open, kind of hard to tell from the picture, but there is some red still to these wounds. We would want to call them in right away just to see what if they want to get somebody out there to potentially do a rescue or not. Sometimes minor injuries can heal on their own, but if you see an animal that's floating high in the water, like this one here in the left corner, that typically means that they have a pneumothorax. So what happened was potentially a boat struck this animal, fractured a rib, and now it's created this big air pocket. And they're not going to be able to submerge and get to the vegetation that they need to get to. So we want to get those called in as soon as possible. They can have barnacles on them, as you right all over this animal. And we would just document that on the scar sheet that there was barnacles on whatever region of the body. You might see tags. They look like this. Our official satellite tags, they're done by, well, it used to be Sea to Shore. They recently just were joined with the Clearwater Marine Aquarium Research Institute. So now they're doing the tagging, but same sort of concept as you see here in the pictures. You've got some sort of satellite with the most antenna. So don't count on the antenna to be there, because potentially it could have gotten bitten off by an alligator or something along those lines. So, but most likely it should be there. These satellites are tracking the animal as long as the satellite is out of the water. If it goes into deeper water where it can't reach, the satellite can't reach the surface, then the satellite stops sending messages until it comes back to the surface again. So that's why there's a little bit of a cord on it, so that, you know, typically our manatees stay in the somewhat shallow waters. So the idea of it, and when they're traveling, they're usually pretty shallow. So the idea of it is so that even when they're traveling, that antenna is still breaking the surface and being able to send off the location. And these are always placed around the peduncle with a thick band, as you can see. This band is made so that it will break away. So if anything gets entangled, one flip of the tail and that'll break right off. And then also it will, the mechanism that's closing it, the clasp, will dissolve over time. So within 2 years, it'll completely fall off the animal anyway. A lot of the times they go and remove the tags once they collect the data from the animal anyway. This is what the tag looks like in the water. You just see a little bit sticking out. There was also another type of tagging, which is called freeze brands. So you can see in the picture here, right between the shoulder blade, they have their freeze brands. So if ever you see those, definitely good to document that. And that's all I have for, you know, or mainly what you would see out there. And like I said, this is kind of just the cliff notes of what our manatee watchers will learn, and pretty much what all the things that they'll do, those are their forms. But basically, whenever they send in photos that and a lot of times the scar sheets that can match up well with the photos, and we can potentially get an ID on that animal. I'll send it off to the USGS, and they'll try to match it in the catalog, and they'll let us know which animal it was, and sometimes give us a history if they have it on that animal. You can see, it's very strenuous work from this picture. Our Manatee watcher working real hard there. She is sporting one of our Manatee Watch t-shirts, which they get after they send in their first 3 Manatee Watch reports. So I'm sending over, along with this PowerPoint, photos, a PDF of photos for you to attempt to do your scar sketching. You'll have ones like this, so just remember when you put it on your sheet, it's going to be try to get the shape looking somewhat the way the shape does in your sketch, and keep it open for your white. Here's another good one with an interesting white scar, or 2 white scars. And then here's another one of Marty's. So you saw him on the slide earlier. And then this guy here, another white one. This one is good too. It has, you can practice with your white scars open, and then your gray healed scar lines as well. This is just the head of a Manatee, so just give you different angles, and sometimes it's not so easy. This one has those barnacles, so you just want to note, like, either draw them in or just kind of circle the area and make note on your scar sheet that that area was covered in barnacles, because the barnacles will sometimes leave scars. So if we see this animal again with this big scar and these little notches down here in the tail, and there's this weird sort of scoring pattern, we'll know that, well, at one point it was documented with a whole bunch of barnacles all over it. Another tail for you. Sometimes there's a lot of tails because a lot of times that's really all you get in your photos. So I'm starting you off with that, but actually there's a bunch of scars here above the peduncle and one over here. So just really look the pictures over, and it's different when you actually see the animal out in the water, because you'll see things that we don't pick up on the picture, and that's the whole point of the scar sheet, which is here, and then a copy of that will also be sent over to you. And then if you have any questions or you want some input on your sketches, or if anything I can answer for you, just my email is dwight@volusia.org. And then if you would like to sign up for our Manatee Watch program or our Manatee Watch training to get more information about our manatees and just a little bit more detail on the program, it's a one-time training that you would have to take, and we'll get you fully signed up. It is usually once a year, and depending on how much longer this virtual stuff keeps going, I might end up doing a virtual training for everybody. I'll see how these go. But until then, otherwise it's usually in the fall sometime. And with that program, as being part of that program, you also have an opportunity to become a volunteer over at Blue Spring in the summertime and assist the park rangers with keeping the harassment down in the swim area of the spring run. So it's a different program, it's a different training, but it's just another option that you would have available for you if you became one of our Manatee Watch people. So for more information on that, feel free to email me. And you can also email, no, we'll stick with that. Go ahead and contact me right at that email address. That'd be great. You can go to www.volusiamanatees.org. And I might have had that website in here someplace. I can try to find it for you. But that website will give you more information about the Manatee Watch program. Why don't I do it this way? Save everybody the. I didn't put it in there, of course. But once again, that's www.volusiamanatees.org. if you want more information about the program. All right, well, thank you everybody for listening. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it.